my mid-40s, I was diagnosed as type 2 diabetic, that I'd already been diagnosed with retinopathy. Also, I had neuropathy, many symptoms that I haven't already mentioned here. My wife found a doctor. He advertised as being specializing in diabetes and geriatrics. And he said, well, would you like to be cured? In 30 years, no one had used the word cure, and he said we could cure it all. And I said, well, who do I have to kill? What do I have to do this?
As a former skier and now surfboarder, Craig has been through a lot to get to where he is today. And I'm impressed. And I want him to tell you the story of like this incredible journey. So Craig, why don't you fill us in?
Well, I'm 74 years old. I weigh currently 160 pounds, and I'm 5'8". So I'm a little bit above what my high school weight was. I was probably 140 then, but the heaviest I've ever been was 220 pounds. And through other forms of weight loss attempts, namely twice with Nutrisystem, 4 times with Weight Watchers, something called Metafast through my doctor, I always lost weight, and I pretty much stayed down to around 180, 190 pounds. So I got rid of the huge amount, but I could never keep it off. And 30 years ago, which put me in my mid-40s, I was diagnosed as type 2 diabetic. And in fact, my doctor, when he diagnosed me, he asked if I was on any medications, and I said no. And he said, well, that's the last time in your life you'll be able to answer that question that way. And so in 30 years of being diabetic, I've seen many doctors, and no one ever addressed the question of, is there a cure? The word cure was never part of the vocabulary. Now, to start where I am now, we have to go back 2.5 years. I just retired, and COVID hit, and we had to put off our long planned 3-month RV vacation until I was 71, since I retired at 70. And just before we went on vacation, my kidney doctor, who had always said, well, for a diabetic, your kidneys are pretty good, not bad. And then out of the blue, he said, okay, you're going on vacation for 3 months. When you come back, we'll talk dialysis. And that's the big D, the way cancer is the big C. When that hits you, it knocks you off. I didn't tell my wife, Kathy, that I'd gotten that news. I didn't want to spoil the 3-month vacation, so we went. And I should back up just a little bit that I'd already been diagnosed with retinopathy. In my left eye, I still have some residual damage, although the retinopathy symptoms are pretty much gone. My left eye is now 20/80. My right eye is 20/25. So those things have improved. Also, I had neuropathy, which is tested for people that don't know. What they do is they take what looks like a little Q-tip, but one end has a little plastic pointed end, and without you looking, they touch the bottom of your foot, and you have to tell whether it's sharp or dull. And if you have neuropathy, it's always dull. And so I was diagnosed with neuropathy in both feet, and basically told, well, try taking some supplements. That's the best we can do for you. There are many other issues associated with type 2 diabetes, but those were the two major ones. We came back from the RV trip after 3 months. My GP, my general practitioner doctor, was no longer with the practice, and I was told that practice wasn't taking new patients, so go find another one. And in this area, it's a resort community called Pismo Beach, California. We have many retired people and relatively few doctors because the living expenses here are relatively high. Most doctor practices don't want to take our Medicare plan. So they'll tell you, we're just not accepting patients, or they might even say Medicare patients. We looked through the searches, and my wife found a doctor, I'll mention him, Dr. Bhatka, who is of Indian descent, born in England and raised and trained in the United States in medicine. And he advertised as being specializing in diabetes and geriatrics. Well, I was diabetic and I'm heading towards geriatrics, so I figured this is the guy. The only kickback is that because doctors are paid so little by Medicare, he is one of those that is considered a concierge doctor, which means in addition to taking Medicare payment, he takes an annual fee. That didn't seem right, but I really wanted to talk to him, see if he was any good, whether he could do anything. I went to meet with him and uh, I told him my problems, many symptoms that I haven't already mentioned here. And he said, well, would you like to be cured? Oh, one of the big ones was high blood pressure and consistently high A1C, the blood sugar. And again, in 30 years, no one had used the word cure, and he said we could cure it all. And I said, well, who do I have to kill? What do I have to do this? And he said, well, you just have to go low carb. Now, I knew low carb meant not having more than one bagel in the morning and only 2 bowls of post toasties, uh, only one bread with my bacon, eggs, and hash browns. So I said, hey, I'm already low carb. And he said, well, rethink that. And my wife had tracked our carbs inadvertently using an app called Lose It for 5 years. And so we didn't know. She was just tracking everything she ate and calories. And so she went back and did asked it the question, how many carbs? Her average carbs were almost 400 a day. And I eat more than she does. So I was way over 400. And what my doctor told me was, you're going to be eating less than 20, and he's using net carbs per day. And as a side, I like starting with net carbs. As you get more and more fanatical about that, as we are, you start saying, well, maybe we should look at total carbs instead of net carbs. So I kind of advise people start with net carbs and then ease your way in and down the rabbit hole and get more and more strict on yourself as it feels comfortable. So I came home from that visit trying to decide whether or not to do that. And when I opened up my computer, msn.com poses a lot of cartoons strips, which I always check out, and a strip written by an author that I'd never seen before, and he had 47 cartoon strips that were presented. The first one, and I have it here, the first one of the cartoon strips that was presented, he doesn't usually talk about diet or anything, but this is the one that he showed, and it's about Ted. And Ted is at the receptionist desk, and the receptionist has some cupcakes. I'll just read it real quick. And the receptionist says, would you like a cupcake, Ted? I said, no, thanks. I'm trying to lose a few pounds. Well, you should go on a low carb diet. That means no bread, no pasta, no pizza, no potatoes, and anything like that. That's a real diet. And Ted says, and he pats his stomach, yeah, I know. I'd rather die. So that hit me while I'm looking at a future, and I was 71 at the time. I really believed I would not live to see 80. I had this vision of me sitting in a dialysis chair 3 or 4 days a week for half a day each day, with blind, with my legs chopped off, which is the eventual end of kidney failure and the end road of diabetes. So I looked at Ted, he'd rather die, and I thought, wow, this is a message. So we did do that together. Kathy has been very supportive every time we've tried something, and she never has as much weight to lose as I. In this case, she had maybe 10 pounds she'd want to lose, but she's been complaining lately about brain fog and a few other things. She's always had asthma, allergic to many things, lots of allergies, and back pains. So when we started researching this low carb thing, and they said these other symptoms might just be benefited by a low carb, she was all in. So we immediately jumped on this. I had no problems with low carb. I've always eaten a lot of beef. I eat the fat. Kathy cuts the skin off of her chicken breast and hands it to me, and I'd eat the skin. I love it. I had no problems increasing all of my meat, decreasing the carbs, and what that means mostly, what I tell people is if it grows above ground and it's not a seed, it's probably okay. A few exceptions to that. Um, avocados. Uh, we don't eat the seed, of course, but the avocado is a regular part of our diet. Any kind of a salad is a part of our diet. Some things like what's strange is the Chinese snow peas. We don't usually eat green peas as a diet, but pods are immature seeds like uh, young green beans and the snow peas. So most of what you're eating is the pod, not the seed. And just to tie that all together, the whole reason not eating anything that grows below the ground is that's where the plant, the roots, the potatoes, the sweet potatoes, the carrots, that's where the root stores its energy to live when it doesn't have sunshine or to go through the next growing season. So that's where all the sugar is. So we went on this, and I also I think these will show up okay. So this is me at age 71, and I was at 186 pounds, and I started losing weight immediately. But at the end of 14 months, this is what I look like. Now now I found that people are so impressed with that I've laminated two cards that I keep in my wallet. Well, let's see. There we go. And on the back side, I have my health statistics. For example, what my starting A1C was of 12 plus to my current A1C, which is it's hovering around 6 or just below. I'm not quite where I'd like to be, but I'm now considered pre-diabetic instead of diabetic. Um, it has on there the neuropathy is receded completely. The retinopathy, my retinologist does not see the inflammation in my retina anymore. I do have damage because they did use laser to abate some of the issues, and that in slowing down the progression of retinopathy, it does do some damage to the eyes, and that's why I think that my eyes will never be totally 20/20, but they're fine for driving and reading with normal reading glasses. My kidneys were measured. There's a scale from 1 to 5. One, actually, there's no zero in kidney measurement. 1 means normal. 5 means dialysis. And my numbers were so high, they don't really register on that scale, but the numbers that are used to determine would really have put me at 4.9. And that's almost stage 5. And now I've backed off and I'm in stage 3 after eating the high protein, which my kidney doctor told me don't eat the protein. And now I'm learning, yes, do eat the protein. The job of the kidneys is to deal with protein, but that's not what clogs up kidneys. Instead, it's the lack of protein that prevents the kidneys from healing. So I've pretty much covered my journey. 2.5 years, people ask, is this sustainable? And the answer is absolutely. None of the other diet plans we worked on were sustainable. They all worked to some degree because we reduced calories so much that we were always hungry. So I've been counseling people um, anywhere I can. Uh, Several times very recently, we've been at a restaurant, and the waitresses will typically raise an eyebrow when we tell them no potatoes, no hash browns, no toast. And we'll have our meal, which I've found that I can go to almost any restaurant and order a decent meal that's either within our plan or just a shade away from the plan. Like sometimes I may not know, I may not be able to get vinegar and oil dressing, but I get some blue cheese, and if it's a little bit bad, that's a tablespoon of badness compared to an entire baked potato. So I think you have to choose your battles. But a lot of times, what I'll do if they do raise their eyebrow, I will pull my two little cards out of my pocket and I'll show them my before and after. At that point, Kathy raises her eyebrows because she knows that Craig is going to start on a rant again. Um, Sometimes I invite people to coffee, and my attitude is I'm retired. I have nothing to sell. I have nothing other than personal pleasure in helping people to gain on this. And I've invited many people for coffee. And sometimes when we get to know each other a little bit, I invite him over for dinner. And I make a meal that is to die for. We will barbecue the ribeye, have with it some muffins that we make that are very keto friendly. Um, we grill zucchini on the grill, and I'll make toss a salad. And then for dessert, we make a very low keto ice cream, a small dish of ice cream with some blueberries on it. And then after all that, I pull out the menu of what they had for the meal, and I show the carbs next to every one. And they're shocked that the butter on the roll is zero carbs, that the steak was zero carbs, that the only carbs came from the few things that were keto friendly, and basically we end up with a less than 10 net carb feast. And I tell them, what's wrong with this? How can this be hard? Of course, one of the things you have to like to cook, and we started chasing carbs when we first got in this. We chased everything. We bought the products. We bought bagels online, and we bought things, and we went by the net carbs, and everything worked well. It really worked well for us. But eventually, we said, making our own bread is takes about an hour to two, and is it really worth the effort? And really want it. And so then we started backing off of all the bread products and moving more and more to what Dr. Berry's wife Nisha calls ketovore, which is less than 10 total carbs, and the rest is of vegetables and stuff, and the rest is meat. And I'd say that pretty much describes where we are now. But we didn't get there overnight. We just slowly started getting more and more into this. And one of the things that really helped, my doctor sent me away that first day. He said, start going to YouTube and start looking. And I had another specialist doctor that I talked to. As soon as I mentioned it, he said, "Oh, Doctor Google." So I've got a list of. We came back and we started becoming fanatics of watching things on YouTube that were low carb oriented or carnivore oriented, and we kind of made it a morning ritual. We'd have our coffee and we'd watch a program, whether it was from, and here's the list of the ones we really like a lot: Doctors Berry, Berg, Baker, Bosworth, Chafee, Eckberg, Jamnatis. If he was younger, I'd adopt him. He pointed at me the first time I saw him, and he said, "You are a junkie. You are a sugar addict." And no one had ever called me that. We'd use the term chocoholic, but I'd never thought of myself as a junkie. Dr. Ovadia, and of course Dr. Violet Rivera. Also, we watch Two Crazy Ketos. They're pretty good. So all of this place, you start getting information. I tell people, okay, when I give them my pitch, I say you have to make a decision. Either Craig is crazy, or you've been lied to all of your life. You have to choose between those two, because what I'm telling you is just too far out to take. You have to make a choice between Craig being crazy and the lies. In fact, I give people a package once we get started, and with the package I give them, I include my pictures and my stats, and I mostly target older people because that's where my sweet spot is letting people my age know that even at age 70 plus, to quote Dr. Berry, it's never too late to start eating the proper human diet. My gosh, what a concept.
I'm curious. You had that one doctor that says to you, "Oh yeah, Dr. Google." But there's a real fear that we have that we're gonna find that crazy person. And maybe Violet's just crazy and she's telling me to do this stuff. And next thing you know, like she's got some product she's trying to sell. Like, how did you determine who I'm believing and who I'm not believing? Because to be fair, many of the doctors you're naming sell things. I'm not going to say I don't try to sell things. Like, how do you know who to believe and who not to believe? What was your determining factor?
Well, we did try a few of the products, thinking that some supplements might help and stuff. We don't take any supplements other than some electrolytes that are that I think are essential if you're, um, and I'm talking about the well, the electrolytes, salt and magnesium and the one other. But but by looking at all the doctors, by seeing consistent information, we went to two. This is how crazy we ended up getting. We went, and we're looking forward to more. We went to two metabolic health summits, one in Santa Barbara and one in San Diego. And we listened to researchers that were presenting cutting edge research that is on the verge of being published. So we were seeing and hearing things before it actually went out there. We were experiencing benefits from everything. Kathy's brain fog is considerably gone, almost gone. Um, no more back problems. Her allergies are gone. Her asthma, maybe once a year, she'll take a puff of something, where before she was almost living off of it. The aches in her back are history. So, and it's not from losing weight. I know you've talked about that as well. That it's the inflammation and it's everything else going wrong that we're trying to solve with good diet. Now, women have a culture. This is often joked about, where you're out to dinner and they all get up together to go to the bathroom, and men never would do that. I'm going to the restroom. Who wants to join me? Men would never do that. Men also, in that same vein, don't talk very much if they don't know each other in the locker room. It's very much a place of privacy, and so I found two ways that I could approach people, and I've been very successful. One, and I'm going to name names because these people I think are proud of the progress they're making. I was getting out of the swimming pool, and there's a fellow coming, and I swim laps, half a mile with the laps, maybe 3 times a week. And this fellow that was coming to the pool, I noticed a patch on his shoulder. So as I was getting out, and he needed to lose, I would say somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 pounds. So it was obvious that he needed some help. And I asked him, is that a CGM, a continuous glucose monitor? He said, yeah. I said, we've got to talk. I used that as my opening, and it got me starting a conversation. We had coffee a couple of times. He came over for dinner, established a good, friendly relationship. That's Juan, and not one, but Juan, and he's having challenges because he's from a culture that eats a lot of tortillas, beans, rice, and so I've given him a little bit of advice about how he can approach a traditional Mexican dinner without the tortillas. And if you have to, and he talked about family, I said, look, take in a little plastic bag, take a few low carb tortillas. Again, that's appropriate if you're counting net carbs instead of total carbs, and just tell the host that you really need to work on this diet, and could you heat these up for me, and I'll use these tortillas when we have the buffet with all the other stuff. Tell them the avocados, the carnitas, the tomatoes, the salsa, all of that stuff is appropriate. It's the darn tortillas and beans that you have to eliminate, but eat everything else. I also tell people if there's a special dessert and they really want you to have it, say, fine, I like a piece, but let me cut it. And what I do when I'm faced with that is I cut such a small piece, it's basically 2 forkfuls, a little sliver. And I tell them, I can't eat this. It's not a part of my diet, but I really want to taste it. And let's face it, the first 2 bites are the best anyway. The least attractive is the second slice of pie. It never tastes as good as the first. So if you're going to do that, you be the one that cut it, because then you won't feel guilty about throwing away part of the pie. And you won't be tempted to eat the whole slice. So things like that can help people.
I'm wondering, have you ever had this scenario, like that scenario that you're talking about, where you're saying, I no, thank you," and the person's pushing the pie or cake anyway? Um, have you ever just tried saying, "Well, I don't like dessert"? Bonus Warrior, I have a favor to ask you. In editing this video, I realized that Sharing our stories is what will help new people to understand that keto actually works. So if you have improved your health, mental health, or weight through eating healthy keto, please look in the description. There's a form to fill out so that we can do an interview and you can share your story. I want to help more people, and I think that together we can help people to understand that keto is more than a diet. It's a way of life that gives you your life back. I'm not a special snowflake. I know that you also have lived amazing things. So let's change this together. The form is below. Have you ever just tried saying, well, I don't like dessert?
I've done that, and especially if it's something I'm not really tempted to have. But I personally, I'm not I'm not as rigorous as some people are, and I know you're very, very rigorous because I've listened to you a lot. But like I said, you have to pick your battles, and um, I
100%.
just don't mind telling someone the truth because so many times that I really would like a slice of it, and I'm going to have a little tiny slice, and that, if anything, might even spark the conversation more. It worked with my sister and her family, and it was just a matter of time before they started getting more on board. Um,
The only reason I'm asking that question and like pointing for an alternate solution is because some people, like myself, are going to taste that piece of cake. And next thing you know, I'm chasing that. And so trying to please this person, I end up 5, 6, 7 days eating the wrong thing. So I also would say that we each need to know ourselves, right? Because if I'm not the person who can just have that 2 bites and be like, oh, that was great, right? Then like the individual also needs to know there's another possible solution. Like,
yes, and I appreciate that in your counseling, and I think that for some people, um, that's absolutely well, um, a heroin addict. Well, I'll just take a pinch. Well, we know that doesn't work, and so
and
from that
that's part
point
of
of
it
view,
too, is recognizing that what we're talking about right now is sugar addiction.
yes,
And
it
for
is.
the people who are, see, I love the fact that you're 74 because you're in that generation, like my parents, who came to the overweight on food. I came to the overweight on cake and cookies. And so like when you say, "Oh, just take a smidge," that doesn't work for me. I'm chasing, right? My parents have always been able to have a bite of a cookie and say, "Oh yeah, that's good," and put it down. I was never able to do that. So that's why I bring it up.
I wouldn't disagree with you at all. That I'd say that my biggest concern right now is getting people to start going down the path, and I would certainly counsel them about that and say at some point you're going to have to decide whether what's right for you is total abstention or uh, that you can um, you know at least ease your way into it and decide later how strict you want to be. And when people find out how strict we are about everything else, they're shocked. Like, wait, you don't eat those keto cakes anymore. You don't do these things anymore. Well, uh, you know, we just found a way around it that satisfies us and it keeps us where we pretty much want to be. I still have a few pounds that I'd like to lose, and we're still reevaluating everything we do. But again, to quote Dr. Berry, the last 10 pounds are the hardest. So
I also think that it's interesting that you started from a place of a doctor saying, "Hey, there is a cure if you're willing to do the work to get to the cure." And for a lot of us, especially when we're starting with weight being the only reason, like it's harder. I think what's well interesting from where you're sitting is that you're a lot of the conversation you're having is with people who do have other things, basically because of the age that what we're dealing with. And so therefore they have that other motivation of maybe I can get off this medication. Maybe my body can feel good again. How amazing would that be?
when I was first diagnosed as being diabetic, I had no symptoms. Well, I did have some symptoms. I was constant thirst, which is what drove me to the conclusion that there was something wrong. My vision was quickly deteriorated. And that's a phenomenon that takes place. Actually, your vision, if you're nearsighted like I am or was, your vision gets better and your glasses stop working because they're the wrong glasses for you. It's a strange relationship between early diabetes and what happens with your eyes. Then going with the constant thirst, of course, was a constant elimination. That's like, wow, you're going crazy. And constant hunger. The swing between hypoglycemia and hyperglycemia is crazy at that stage.
And how long did it take for those things to change for you? So you tried these other diets, and you said you actually had lost weight with the other diets, but that was before your diagnosis?
Yes, and the symptoms went away too. The thirst, being able to get off of medications, because like with Weight Watchers, I got down to probably around 160. Yeah, probably about 160, 170. And at that weight, a lot of the symptoms were going away, probably just because I was eating so much salad and the points they have, you tend not to eat a lot of cookies. So it inadvertently helped. The problem was I was hungry all the time, and it was not sustainable. As soon as I got off the diet, every week another 2 or 3 pounds.
So that's an interesting point you just made there. With Weight Watchers, when you got to a healthy weight, you got off the diet.
Of course, everybody does.
Okay.
We're
So
told
there's
not to. We're told to stay out of this the rest of your life, but when you're hungry all the time, you can only do that for so long.
which when we compare it to keto, well, low carb keto, whatever however we want to call this, what you're doing right now, carnivore, like when we compare it to what you're doing right now, actually you're not hungry.
Absolutely. I tell people if you're hungry, really hungry, eat something. Either eat a good snack, and that's one of the things I give people in their package is a list of a page and a half of things to have on hand so that if you are really hungry, snack on something that's decent and don't go for a pizza run, and consider instead have your next meal. If it's an hour before your next meal, eat the meal and be generous. Now, Dr. Berry's backed off. He talks about eating until you're comfortably stuffed. He used to say, and I tell still people this: till you're comfortably stuffed, and then take 2 more bites. He doesn't say that anymore. But but my point is that if you're comfortably stuffed, then you might go to bed with a little bit, and we eat typically around 2 o'clock. So we like to go to bed without anything heavy on our stomach, sleep through the night, and either we'll have a light breakfast or we won't eat until the next day at 2 o'clock. So we're either 2 meals a day or 1 meal a day, depending. And sometimes we do skip another day for a longer fast.
One of the things that I will say, because I've heard Dr. Berry say that, I didn't know he stopped saying it though, but I heard him say that. And I think Dr. Chaffee puts it a bit more plainly because he makes the distinction if you're eating veg, then eating to satiation is actually the more important point. If you're doing carnivore, yes, eat until you're comfortably stuffed. And I feel like that distinction sometimes isn't clearly enough made that if you let vegetation in, there's you still need to be careful because you're letting vegetation in.
Uh, Kathy seems to have more of a problem with vegetables. I don't seem to, I haven't had any reactions any time in my life, I think, from eating all sorts of vegetables. That, for me, it's fine, but for her, uh, every time she has a salad, it's like, oh, gas. So there are a few vegetables she'll eat that she can get away with, like some cooked string beans. Uh, but but she really stays away from most vegetables. It just works better for her.
Was that something that Kathy noticed immediately? Because you guys came on this journey together.
That's a good question. No, I think it was just the whole diet. We were eating more meat and less vegetables. She just started saying, I'd rather just eat the meat. And she's someone that cut off, only would eat the chicken breast. She cut off the skin, and she'd have only a little bit of beef, as we'd been lectured. Where I grew up here in California, in our family we barbecued 5 nights a week. If it was hamburgers, hot dogs, or a steak, it was always something, almost always something barbecued, because the weather lent itself to it. Sort of, we've hit Dr. Berry a few times. I wanted to bring up part of the packet I give people is the table of contents to his book, Lies My Doctor Told Me. I hand that to people and I say, you have to read the table of contents. I suggest you get the book too, but just read the table of contents and ask yourself, how many of these things have I been lied to about? And it's shocking. He has 20 or more items on that table of contents alone that just say, you know, what part of the egg do you eat? I challenge people to that. Well, of course, we eat the whites and we throw away the yolks. Wrong answer. It's amazing how many lies there are out there, especially around beef, the fat, the good fats, the bad fats. I'll put it in quotes, healthy seed oils. My gosh, we've been told that for so long, and we've been lied to for so long. And so I challenged him. I said, get his book. Here's the table of contents. Get the book. Look at other references. If you don't believe what he's saying, every chapter has references of studies that he cites. He's very good at that. And so you have to start moving down that path and say and question, well, maybe Craig isn't crazy after all. Maybe I was lied to all the time.
It's scary to think that we've been lied to. I think it's part of the reason that people resist. I know for myself when I saw that data that said carbs cause inflammation, and then I searched on it and realized, oh my God, it's been known for years. That was hard. And I think what you're showing people is that just because we've been lied to doesn't mean that we can't turn it around. At 71, you turned it around and have been.
I tell people, eat the diet that your great grandmother ate as a girl. She didn't have ding dongs and tweakies. She didn't have post toasties. And she may have had very coarse oatmeal, but she didn't, have cakes and cookies coming out of her ears like we do. So that's the first place to start is think about your great grandmother's diet. And I don't know how many cultures are heavy on meat. I was raised heavy on meat, and I kind of got away from it. You know, being on my own, going to college was the start of it. There's all the food you can choose from, and I started choosing all the bad stuff because I'd have meat, but also you'd have all the potatoes and everything else.
One thing that I think about today, I didn't think about it before, but with my dad talking to my dad's a chef. And growing up, he worked in mostly like fancy restaurants. And one thing that in our conversations now we have, it's like, yes, in those fancy restaurants, the main thing on the plate was either the meat or the fish or the lobster, whatever it was that was the main thing. And, the rice and the vegetables were the sides. Where when you go to the not fancy restaurants, the meat is the side. And it's really interesting how we don't let our mind actually focus on that.
Well, the other way I found in the locker room, I was I'd done my swim, taken my shower, and I was just ready to get back into my locker to change. And another fellow came up, and I hadn't approached my locker yet, and it was still locked. And he took the locker right next to mine, and there's no one else in the locker room. He didn't know I was there, and so I said, oh, okay, let's go in here. And he said, oh my gosh, and he pulled this stuff out. He said, I didn't mean to be right next to you. Well, he had no way of knowing. And that's John. He also needs to lose about 100 plus pounds. And so, but I just started a conversation with him, and it turned out he mentioned it was his first day in the club, and so I asked him what he was interested in, and I just started a conversation as innocuous as I could, and it turns out that he's just in this area for a short time, but he comes every year, and he decided that he could get some exercise, and so he got some temporary passes. Well, after we chatted just a little bit, I said, I don't want to be pushy, but I reached in my wallet, pulled out my 2 cards, and I said, this is me 2.5 years ago, and this other one is me 14 months later. And I've discovered something that is completely different than I'd ever seen in my life. And those 2 pictures, later he said it was the picture, the comparison picture, and seeing you that did it. Well, we had coffee and came over for dinner. And it turns out that he owns an Italian deli in Chicago. And he says, I really like prosciutto. Well, prosciutto is ham. I said, well, you can eat all the prosciutto you want. He said, I can? I said, look, think of antipasta. What is antipasta? It's a big platter of everything but pasta. So you've got You've got cheese, you've got salami, you've got tomatoes and peppers. You have all these nice things on there, and they're all consistent with your diet. I do warn people that cheese can be, you can overdo cheese, and some people can't tolerate it. Kathy has a problem with lactose, so she doesn't eat cheese unless it's like goat cheese. You can handle that. So we do very little cheese, but he was shocked. Um, so we had the dinner. He had a trip out of town. We also had a trip out of town. We just came back a couple of days ago and got back in touch. And he said, "Well, I've been in town for a couple of days. I suggest we get together." And he said, "Let's wait until Tuesday because I really hit it hard now that I'm not with all the friends and the restaurants when I was away from this area. So give me a week, and we'll get back together and we'll talk about how my progress is." And he's 100% sold. And he has diabetes in his family. I think a lot of it helps if people have family members that have gone down that path and they see themselves heading down that path. But I find it easiest to deal with people that are like me. They've hit bottom or are at hitting bottom. They have no other place to go. And I'm the first person they've run into that gives them hope that there's a cure, there's a way to change it, and it's not hard. And it can be a way of life because now I have 2.5 years under my belt.
I'm kind of curious, as you mentioned that you're a skier, or you were, or were. Huh? When did you stop skiing?
Well, Kathy is from Colorado and she had never skied. Uh, I'm from the beach, and I'd gone on a ski trip once or twice while in college. We ended up meeting in Las Vegas, and we got married in Las Vegas. Now I tell people that that she was serving drinks and I was dealing blackjack, but which is a story they like. The truth is, she was teaching first grade, and I was a computer programmer for the telephone company. They like the other better. I introduced her to skiing because there's skiing very nearby Las Vegas, both in outside of Las Vegas and in southern Utah, which is nearby. And we did so much skiing while we were dating that we honeymooned in Lake Tahoe and skied a lot there. And then after we were married, we continued the skiing until we moved away from Las Vegas. We moved to Southern California, and it was just too far away. It's a 8-hour drive. We continued with water skiing. We had a ski boat in Las Vegas because of Lake Mead. So we water skied there, came back to California. I was able to get back into surfing. And one of my high school surfing buddies, Ron, um, he's got health problems, health issues, but also a weight issue. And his wife has health issues. And I started introducing them to low carb. And Ron is a gourmet chef, not by profession, but he takes pride in his cooking, and so started having us over. In times he was having us over, we said, "Look, you know, we know what you're going to prepare, but we're not going to eat this. We'll eat that." And so he really worked around what we could do, and we talked a little bit about it, and gave him some guidelines of, there's some things just to consider. So then about a couple months later, I got a call from him, and he started going a little bit low carb. He'd introduced a few of the concepts. He's gone more and more into low carb. He's taller than me. He's 6 foot plus, and I don't know how much he's lost, but he's down to 180 pounds, which for a 6-footer is probably equivalent to me being 160 pounds at 5'8". So he has been very successful, and I thought he was not going to do it at all. And his wife is going along with him 100%, and I think that it's helping both of them. I haven't had a real long talk with him about that, but he's continuing to surf. And why I wanted to mention it is that there's another fellow that he surfs with a lot, whose name is Greg, and the two of them have gone down to Costa Rica surfing within the last few years. And Ron was telling me that Greg, who's apparently, I've met Greg once years ago, and apparently Greg's in great shape. And Greg told Ron that he wants to live to be 100. And Ron said, "Can you believe that?" And I said, I thought I was going to live to 80 if I was lucky. And now I'm thinking about dying in my 90s. I think that I too will shoot for 100. I said, "That's a good goal." And recently Ron said, "You know what? I want to live to be 100 too." Now people I'm talking to, the John who I mentioned earlier, I mentioned him, and he said I like to live to be 100. So I'm starting a low carb century club. And I have another friend in San Diego that we just visited a few last week, and he's been going through other health problems, but going low carb, I got him going a long time ago, maybe a year and a half ago, has helped him through some surgery that he had to go through, and he's 100% on board. And so when I talked to him last week, he said, "Yeah, let's all go to 100." So it's like giving people hope to go forward, and those are the two things. The two words I'd say are most important are hope and cure. And those are things that during my life as a diabetic, no one had ever given me either of those. And now it's so clear. It's just crazy.
Well, the thing is that it's not crazy when we have good information. Like your doctor gave you amazing information because it was the right information. And I feel like one of the hard things, at least from where I'm sitting anyways, it looks like that, is that doctors the doctors that do know that getting carbohydrates out of our diet is the answer, that are in the mainstream, either are afraid to tell us or don't believe we do it anyway. And they don't push it hard enough.
My pharmacist, who also is a local surfer, great guy, and he said, "You keep knocking all this." He said, "I see you're losing weight. You're getting off these meds because they keep not renewing." He said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, at the time, this is 2 years ago, no, a year and a half ago." I said, "Well, I'm keto," because I was almost ashamed to tell people because of the criticism. Keto had such a bad name. And he says, "Well, don't tell anyone, but my family and I, we're all keto." So he didn't want his patients, I mean, the people he's giving all these pills out to, he didn't want to get in trouble for telling them that they didn't need to take the pills.
We have both sides of that. Like we've there's so many doctors who made it public that they got in trouble for telling people to eat keto. So we like that's a real thing. But then you have the other people who just don't believe that we would do it if we were even told. And I've run into that as well. And it's so frustrating that there's an answer, but you won't do it. So whatever is kind of sometimes an attitude that we get.
When you're young, like Ted,
Yeah.
you can say,
Yeah.
"I'd rather die." And that's what I hear a lot from younger people. And I don't really go out of my way to approach younger people because I know that it's such a tough thing to approach people with. But people I've gotten to know that keep seeing Craig's still with it and he's still doing well. They're starting to come around and say, "How do you do it?" And now I'm 20 people later that I've helped.
I want to add something because I think you know, the younger people part of the story, because so 50, right? In our 50s. And when you talk to people, they still have this belief that, but it's not really a problem. It's not going to happen to me, or even if it's starting to happen to me, yeah, but yeah, it's that's far away. And I think that one of the things you're pointing out to me right now that's clicking is that when you are actually on medication and the medication is actually making your life worse, right? You're living the repercussions. You're having the problem. Like when all those things are happening, all of a sudden the it's okay isn't so okay, and you want a solution, which is what I think is happening with the people you're talking to. They've lived and they no longer believe the lie that says just take the pill, you'll be okay, because you're taking the pill and stuff is still happening.
It starts at 40. At 40, the warranty is up. And that's when everyone that I know is in trouble with this. Is when I started going downhill, having lots of physical problems. Uh, I tell people everything from your nose to your toes gets better. Your dandruff goes away. Your athlete's foot goes away. Toe fungus goes away. Um, my gosh, one of the things I put on there is my night trips. At my age, It's a constant thing, and I have to say, some people watching this may be too young to know Rodney Dangerfield, but he said that they got it right. These are the golden years, 4 or 5 times a night. Well, yeah, now I'm down to two, and I thought that for people my age, two is pretty good.
It's amazing that you've been able to turn around. First of all, that you're going to the bathroom without assistance, right? Because you were in the verge of like, I don't ever get to go again.
Yep.
But the second part is like that I'm able to manage my bladder the whole night, or even like just getting up twice instead of 5 times. That means I get good sleep. That means tomorrow I have better energy. That means tomorrow my mood is going to be better. So my wife and I get along. Like everything matters and it just cascades forward. Taking care of myself equals a happier life.
With a wife that I've gotten along with really, really well for over 50 years. I mean, doing this together, Kathy's best friend in high school, and we're still very, very close to her. She has diabetes in her family, and they refer to being overweight as the family curse. And we worked with her. She came to see us. I'd say we were within. I think we were a year and a half into it, and she spent Christmas with us for almost 2 weeks. So we got her started down that path. She was scheduled. She has fairly bad macular degeneration, and they wanted to schedule her for surgery for glaucoma because her eye pressure was up in the low 20s. She stayed with us for 2 weeks on that diet. She got back and she pretty much stuck to it. And about a month or two later, she went to the doctor to talk about the appointment. They measured it, and her eye pressure was down to 12, which is normal. Uh, and then recently, I just heard that the correlation between macular degeneration, both wet and dry, is the sugar and possibly the seed oil. And in the year 1900, eye doctors would see typically one patient out of 100,000. And now they're seeing 1 out of 7 people over 70 with macular degeneration. So it's definitely tied to sugar, both the wet and the dry.
So it sounds to me like first of all, it sounds like your wife is pretty much carnivore, but you're still able to do veg. And so you're doing both.
I do vote both. I'll eat some olives when she's not, as a snack, a few things like that, artichoke hearts. Give her a steak or a barbecued hamburger, and she's happy.
That's great. You mentioned that. I, I'm just wondering what has your wife improved in her health?
The brain fog is significantly less. She was a CPA, so she knew when she was having troubles because we'd play cards and she'd do the score, and she'd have trouble adding up the numbers. She'd forget that she'd just played. It wasn't her turn. She thought was still trying to be her turn, and those things have gone away. So she has ways to measure herself. So I can tell that there are things that have changed. Her speech pattern. She's quicker with her speech pattern now. Uh, Before she would have to do a lot more thinking between words to make sure that it came out right, and now the fluency is coming back. So yeah, there's measurable things. Yeah, in addition to that, I mentioned the asthma. She's been asthmatic all her life. The allergies to so many things. Well, the sensitivity of her skin, that the seam of a shirt would bother her. So she'd try to, when she could, if she's wearing an overcoat, she'd have the shirt on inside out so that the seam wouldn't rub against her. That's gone. Just little things like that. She does have a scoliosis of the spine, which contributes to her back problems, but she never had surgery, and the pain is gone. And she's lost the 10 pounds she wanted to lose.
What I find amazing is that your wife did this to support you, And she's solved things that most people would not have thought were related to food.
I know. It's amazing. You tell people about all these things, something simple like skin tags. I had some on my eyebrows, eyelids, which is common, gone. I said, what do you mean gone? I said, they get redissolved, they go away. Moles will go away. Maybe not all of them, but people talk about it all the time, that skin issues clear up. Well, of course. I ask people, if you take your dog to the vet because the dog isn't feeling good, what's the first thing the vet asks?
What are you feeding the dog?
What are you feeding this animal? Yes. And I then ask people, when was the last time your doctor asked what you're feeding yourself? I said, never. Isn't that crazy? Absolutely crazy.
But Craig, that's the lie you're talking about. That's the secret lie that we've all been living in, and we're unaware that doctors have stopped asking, what are you eating? Go back in history, they used to ask, I'm sure. They've stopped asking.
Well, one of the problems, oh my gosh, I'm not sure I should go into this. It's the two commercials I've seen lately. One is the new one, the Ozempic, where this very overweight woman is dancing and singing with joy because she has Ozempic, glamorizing her. It's we've gone overboard to try to eliminate the shame, and so instead we're glorifying it, and that drives me crazy. And then the other one that, and I just saw it recently, but apparently I googled it and found this Kellogg commercial has been around for over a year, and that's where Tony comes in and he says, "What's for dinner?" And there's the family of four sitting around the table, and they all yell, "Breakfast! We're gonna have breakfast for dinner." And they got three different kinds of Kellogg's products on the table. Tony's holding the Frosted Flakes, and he says, "It's not just a breakfast food anymore; it's for dinner." And then they have a picture of an animated chicken, and the chicken said, "Well, I'll just go back in the refrigerator and marinate some more."
So it's hard to believe that we're still pushing this narrative that food has no impact on how we feel, how we look, how we like anything, our illnesses. It's zero impact. Even I don't remember who was it. Was which philosopher was it that said, "Let food be thy medicine, medicine be thy food"? Like it goes back so far.
That's all they had. They had herbs, and they had what they could eat. Well, the one adage I like is that man is the only animal smart enough to make his own food, and the only animal dumb enough to eat it.
Oh my goodness. So we're trying to step in between those lies and the people we care about. And I like your approach because you're having nice, casual conversations and helping people to just look at what's real. Look at what I've been able to accomplish without medication, was on medication for years and didn't accomplish this, which I think is the other big, huge thing that you're showing. You were actually on medication for years and able to get off.
Yeah, yeah,
Are you on nothing now?
nothing unless you count 3 tablets of MCT oil. And there's something that my doctor wanted me. It's a probiotic or something for gut health, and which I don't know how effective it is. And vitamin D3, what is that? D3, not D3, D2, something 3 and 2.
D3. D3K2?
Yes, D3K2. Um, and then some drops for the electrolytes, just some off over the counter supplements.
I love it because it talks about how when you eat normal, healthy, regular food, your body can turn things around, which is what's happened.
I look in the mirror and I say, "Craig, you look so much younger." And I have to stop myself and say, "No, that's wrong. I look like a 74-year-old should look." I see people younger than me that look like they're on their last leg. I see people that are my age that well, I guess I have to tell you this story. My first high school reunion after we went keto was a about a year, right at a year later, after we'd started. We'd been into it a year. So I was 72 then. This one girl, I call them girls, they're my age, but I grew up with them and I still see them in high school. This one girl came up and talked to me, and then she brought her friend over. And I don't remember which of the two approached me. It was either Tina or Diane. And they were the first people I talked to about this outside of my family, outside of Kathy, actually. I mean, nobody knew because we were still evolving. We didn't know how it was turned out, but it was already apparent after a year that I looked different than I did the last time they'd seen me 5 years earlier. So we had them over for dinner. Every time I start this conversation, Kathy rolls her eyes, thinking, "Okay, Craig's gonna bring someone else home for dinner," and we introduced them to it. Um, One of them, she referred to it as oh, I don't know the name. It's basically migraines and debilitating. Where 3 or 4 times a week she had to, the typical go into a dark room and curl up. And the other one, both of them had some weight issues that they wanted to resolve, but there were health issues in both of them. But the one with the migraines went home and started immediately cutting out the sugar. And so that now is a year and a half later, because it was a year into our journey, and she's had no migraines
She
since
hasn't had another migraine since then.
since the meal she had with us. Yeah,
That's impressive.
yes, and oh, I met a woman, one of the waitresses we met along the line. We talked to her, and I got her email address and forwarded information. I don't know whether she's taking it seriously, but she's overweight. She could probably lose 30 pounds. But she's telling me about her husband, and he's been diabetic a long time. 3 years earlier, he started developing a sore on the bottom of one of his feet, a neuropathy, and about the size of a silver dollar, and it wouldn't heal. And finally, last year, they cut off his leg.
Oh my goodness.
I'm hearing these stories firsthand from people that I really never wanted to consider, but that was, for the grace of God, there goes me, right? For the grace of my doctor, there goes me. Yeah. So, and you hear that and you say, okay, wait a minute. That's because of the profits available to big pharma and big ag, and our government's pushing the wrong scenario.
And also because they don't see us, right? It's so easy to take my money and give me a medication that you know isn't going to do any good for me in the long run if you don't see the outcome that happens to me. It's
Exactly.
so different when you're at the front line. That's why the doctors are kept in the dark.
Some of them are actually chopping off the legs, though. They have to see it and they have to know.
Well, what they know is that this person is at the stage where their leg needs to be chopped off. Do they truly understand that the food they were eating got them there, that the medications that they were on helped keep them in the story and got them there? Like, unfortunately, the number of people that I've spoken to who say, but my blood is good because I'm taking my medication so I can eat the cake is staggering.
We met a fellow once. We were at an RV event, and where we had a supper at a restaurant. And this fellow sat next to me. Uh, for some reason, we started talking about diabetes. He says, "Yeah," he says, "I'm diabetic, but I've got this pump, and it measures my sugar and it pumps in insulin when I need to." And while we were sitting there, he drank 2 glasses of wine. He knew he had a problem, but his pump took care of it for him, so he was fine. Now, I don't know him. I met him just that night. I don't know. That was probably 10 years ago.
What's frustrating is that we're getting better at giving people solutions that covers up the real problem. Because that guy probably was a type 1 and would have needed to inject himself right? Every few hours before he eats something. And we'll just attach a pump and then it'll do the thing. And we make it easier for him to eat the wrong things.
Well, that's what Ozempic is now doing, and It's now known that it's a lifetime commitment. And I don't know if you've heard that's made in Europe. I think Switzerland, and it's banned in all of Europe. Their only customer is the United States.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, and they're the most profitable pharmaceutical in Europe.
Again, one of those situations, right? We make a product, we sell it overseas. We don't need to see the outcome of this, right? Our people aren't having it. So we get to make the money without our people getting any damage. Why are we unable to see that that's, well, it's almost everything to do with food if you stop and think about it. It's a way of business that works.
It's a business model.
Yeah. And it's scary. It's scary because we're born into it and raised in it. And we don't see the flaw because we can't see the flaw because we're in it all the time.
Yes, like they talk about a fish not knowing what water is.
Exactly.
Mm.
I'm really curious to know, like, these conversations that you're having. I mean, ultimately, this is about you giving to the people that you meet what you were given from your doctor. And so far we've talked about people who they at least they listened and they entertain the conversations, how I'll say that. But do you have people that give pushback that just don't want to hear it?
Yeah, our neighborhood drunk. She she is diabetic. Uh, she's she has a lot of problems, and I told her that she had to talk to my doctor, and she did, and he said, Greg, she's not ready. She's in total denial of everything, and you can't be doing that. You have to find the people that are receptive, and there's enough around that I'm not wanting for people. I just have to find ways to approach people. It's very difficult at the gym for me to approach people that obviously need my help, and or they need this. They don't need me. They need this. They need this information. And it's very difficult to walk up to someone and say, I see by looking at you that you're in trouble. I need to be more ready to, or find ways to approach people. I found for these two fellows, Juan and John, I found ways to approach them by starting conversations. There's another fellow I have my eye on that I think he may be Japanese. Um, Not real tall, but very, very overweight. I've seen him struggle. And we've had pleasantries where, he comes in, and I haven't seen him very often, but a few times I've seen him. We say hi, and he just seems like very glad to see me, to say hi to somebody. So I'm thinking that I need to start making a conversation with him, like, what do you work on, or what do you like to do, or something, and maybe then open the door and approach him. But there was another fellow there that was in a wheelchair. He swam. People are doing all sorts of exercises there, but this other fellow happened to be a swimmer, and he would take his wheelchair, his electric wheelchair, to the edge of the pool, and then haul himself into the pool and swim. And Joe was his name, was because I didn't see him for a long time, and I asked the front desk, I haven't seen this fellow in the wheelchair, Joe. I know his name's Joe. So yeah, he died.
Oh,
And I can't help but think that I'd seen him there for a year, and what if I had approached him before that year? Maybe I could have saved his life. I don't know. But he was so overweight and so struggling with everything. And I thought, he's in pain. I have no idea. I don't know his personal story. So that's part of the culture. Is it's difficult just to walk up to a stranger and say, "Boy, have I got an answer for you." I mean,
I think that we want to help, and it's one of those things where I might know that I have information that could be helpful, but at the same time, like you're saying, they need to be ready. The fact that you're doing this one person at a time, I find inspiring, I think is the word that's coming to me right now, because like so many people, again, going back to this greedy world that we live in, will get a piece of information and hold it on hold it to themselves. And you're giving it to whoever was willing to listen. So I think I'm inspired
I have to
by
tell
what you're
you,
doing.
I have to tell you my backstory about that. Then
Okay.
it goes back to my father, and he was just an average person. Well, not to me, but I mean, he worked for the state of California for the highways, and so didn't have anything particular. But my folks were they were very careful with their money, and so for them, they did the right things. We didn't take elaborate vacations. We barbecued a lot, but it was always the cheap cuts of meat. And when he retired, uh, he bought a used Cadillac, and he started volunteering his time. Great, he's a student of languages and geography, geology, um, politics, everything, history. So he decided to volunteer his time at a local junior college to help teach and prepare uh, people that are studying for their American citizenship history. They have to take a history exam. So he had prepared all his materials about the branches of government and all the things they needed to know to pass the exam. And so he would have these classes that would go for maybe 6 weeks, and then sometime later he'd have another series of classes. One time, one of the fellows came up to him and said, "Mr. Chandler," he says, "they must pay you an awful lot to teach these classes because you drive a Cadillac." And his answer was, "No, they don't pay me anything." And the guy was shocked that my dad would volunteer his time. So when I started approaching retirement, I got to thinking about, well, what am I going to do? And what can I do to equal my dad? And I called that same junior college, and they, well, we really don't do that. There's some government programs for that, and you could volunteer as a student teacher. And I called the school, and they said, well, yeah, it's nothing really firm or anything. So I just didn't do anything. And then I went through the transition myself, and I found that how I had helped Diane and Tina, who had approached me at the reunion, and I thought, there's my calling. It's right here, right in me. So that's how I got started with it. So I have to tell people immediately, look, I don't want to help you because I want to make money. I have nothing to sell. I don't make anything. All I get is the gratitude of helping people, and it alleviates the pain of knowing what people are going through when they have no hope. And I just want to help as many people as I can. So I invite them to the coffee, and if we hit it off, then I typically bring them home. And like bringing home a stray dog, Kathy saying, "Oh, here's another one Craig's bringing home," and of course she's on board with it 100% with me. We prepare the meal together. We she's a great host, and since she's gone through the journey, she helps out with explaining how it all works to people.
Which is great because I feel like it's also good to have two perspectives, right? Because you have a lady's perspective and a man's perspective. And I feel like because each person can have different questions.
They do, and there's so many things that are particular to women about this. I don't know if you know the individual on that's working her way through it, Carnivorous Me, and she's lost 100 pounds so far. I think she started at 350 pounds. She she's down. I mean, she still is overweight, and she's working her way. She hasn't stopped, but it takes a long time to get rid of 200 pounds. But now she's looking forward next year. I think she's in her mid 30s. She's looking forward next year. They're going to try for a baby, and she said that her, I don't know what to call it other than hormonal system, everything has changed for her. All of the female issues that come about with being overweight have changed for her so dramatically, and it's just so great.
Again, it's amazing that we don't realize that the food we eat is impacting some of these things.
It's so simple. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're so happy when a diabetic gets down to 7 of his A1C, and they don't realize that that's still heavy into diabetes because they didn't know how to get below that.
I feel like the thing that's really important for everyone watching this to keep in mind is that when you were doing everything that you were doing, you had a doctor following you
I
that
do.
understood.
I do. He is okay. The average doctor in the United States sees over 2,000 has over 2,000 regular patients. If they see them twice a year, that gives them 6 to 10 minutes per patient. My doctor, being a concierge doctor, limits his practice to 200 patients, not 2,000. And I have his personal cell number. How many doctors give out their cell phone number? We meet with him every month. He comes to our house. Now, he doesn't need to because we can make it to his office. But a lot of his patients are geriatric and they can't get out. I have a neighbor that we turned him on to, and she's in her early 90s. And it's difficult for her to get to a doctor, for her to go somewhere to have the labs done. So he goes to her house. Actually, he goes to her house and comes to ours right afterwards, and every month. And for the blood work, he arranged for someone to come to her house and draw her blood for the blood work, and she paid $50 for that, which means she doesn't have to go to a lab, be surrounded by all sorts of sick people, and get her blood drawn just for that purpose. When people ask me, well, is it worth the money? I say, well, I don't know how to tell you this. I have a friend that just spent $5,000 on his Porsche, not to buy the Porsche, just to maintain it. So what's it worth to have real health and a real doctor taking you along the journey?
So when people ask, is it worth the money? I really do feel that there's still this belief that we have that first, health should be free. And second, that if you have poor health, you shouldn't have to pay to get and on some level I agree that we should just be healthy. That's an ideal story. And if we eat properly, that was what would happen. But flip side of the coin, if tomorrow accidentally I fell down some stairs or something happened to me, I wouldn't expect that the doctor is just going to give services away. So when we ask that question, it's always puzzling to me of what do I think the money's for, but to make me healthy.
I had a doctor that I went in. It was for diabetes, and we went through all the stuff and reviewed the medicines and stuff. And I said, I've got a lump on my hand here, and I didn't know if it's a bruise or is that something. And he says, well, I'm sorry, Craig, but I've already spent more time with you today than I can afford or than I should. And he got up and left. So that's healthcare system when you don't pay for it.
That's so insulting.
I
Um,
know, but Kathy had a doctor that when he was ready to call it quits, instead of just saying, well, now we're done, he just walked towards the door and put his hand on the doorknob. And that was the cue that he's leaving, that it's time to end the session.
One thing that makes me think about is the fact that we get angry when salespeople or even phone companies or whatever treat us like a number, but somehow we allow medical to treat us this way. And like right, and it seems like there's no repercussion, but that's just so insulting. And honestly, it's frustrating because they have the power that they have, like doctors now I'm talking about, and yet they don't have all the information. They're making huge decisions and they're not giving us the 5 minutes to give them all the information. So at least if you're going to make a bad decision, make it on all the information.
I think, now we're getting political, but I think that doctors are paid so little with Medicare, they have only a few choices. They have to do a huge number of patients, or they have to go, like my doctor, the concierge route, where they can have minimum patients and people pay something in addition to make up the difference, or they get kickbacks from drug companies. Did Craig say that? They have to have a product to make money off of because they're not making it off of being a doctor, which they did in the past.
The medical system has problems in Canada and the US. So I do feel like there needs to be revamps and whatever. But ultimately, the other question is, why did you become a doctor? Did you become a doctor to help people or just to make a bunch of money? And like the two things need to balance out. And if we're not balancing it out, now there's a big question of where do you lean? And if you're leaning just towards the money, you're going to have people quit you as a doctor. I hope, anyways. I hope that's what happens, because that's kind of
Well, the burnout rate is fantastic. I've heard the suicide rate is abnormal. So I think that they do go in. Most of them go in with altruistic. They're bright people. They've studied hard. They have to have something that motivates them in addition to money. But the system, just knocks them down. They didn't want to become a government employee when they went to med school.
so then it makes you look at the flip side of the coin when you have doctors like Baker and Berg and all these doctors that, first of all, risk saying what they're saying to help people and help so many more people than they will ever be paid by. It's really impressive, right? And I feel like you're right. We need to keep in mind that there are those doctors who truly want to help, and if we end up in front of a bad one, we need to change doctors.
Well, we could solve all that problem if we were not lied to, because most of what people go to a doctor for is diet related. So if you eliminate all diabetes and all the complications from diabetes, doctors would have more time to really do the real doctoring.
Interesting point. Yeah. So much of what we are suffering with comes back to eating the wrong thing.
Absolutely.
Okay. Is there a way for people to get in touch with you? Like, or like, how can
I
people
don't
talk to you?
have a real channel, but I am on Facebook. And to find me, you could just search for Craig Chandler and put in the word Pismo or Pismo Beach, and I think that will find you, and then you can send me a message or something. I'd certainly be glad. I don't know about all of your subscribers if I could handle that barrage, but I would be glad to if a reasonable number of people wanted my packet that I send to people. I'd be glad to send them a packet. Um, if for nothing else, to have my cartoon of Ted to put on their refrigerator, which has been on ours for 2.5 years now.
It's been there for 2.5 years. That's cool. Perfect. Thank you so much for this interview. And I hope you're going to be able to answer some questions in the comments too.
Thank you very much for having me.
Wellness Warriors, there's a video on the screen right there that you can click on to start your keto journey. I look forward to seeing you over there. So click on the link.